Hey, it is the Delicious Recap Family Matters. I'm Jon Francois.
I'm Ajay Vandertunt.
Is there anybody you are specifically this week, or are you your kind-hearted, doughy self?
I am
Or I'm
just
sorry, I
me.
didn't mean to say it that way. When I say that, I mean like you're like a sweet treat. I don't
I
know.
like
Never
doughy.
mind.
Doughy things are delicious. So if it's doughy, I'm eating it. It's gonna be good. But I'm just me. I am just me today because we're having fun with the person.
Yeah, that person is Mark Nassar. He had a guest role as the robber on the season 2 episode of Family Matters, Dog Day Halloween. And I'm just realizing through Mark's conversation with us, it's named after a very famous Al Pacino movie. And not only do we get some insight into Mark's Family Matters experience, his experiences acting alongside Jaleel and Kelly, but we also get plenty of great stories about his experience auditioning as an actor, his experience creating his own work. He's just a multifaceted talent, and we could not love him more.
Yeah, we're getting history. We're getting film history, queer history, Black history. We're getting history in this interview, and I love it.
Mark Nassar, right here on the Delicious Recap. I mean, I genuinely enjoyed your robber role in the season 2 Family Matters episode, Dog Day Halloween. So we recap Family Matters week by week, episode after episode, and we occasionally get to talk to fantastic people like yourself who was actually there. So let's just start with how you got the role in the first place.
I had just gotten out to Los Angeles. I was a New York actor, and I had a show which I mentioned to you before called Tony and Tina's Wedding, and that show went out to Los Angeles. And I had an agent, and I was, going out on the TV auditions and whatnot. And Family Matters was my very first booking, and it was I was kind of spoiled because it was really sweet cast to be around in the beginning. I think I was in the second year, I'm not sure, but it was just a warm cast. I know that you say it was family, but it was, and it was really a lot of sweet people, and the legendary Rosetta LeNoire, who who
Yeah.
I didn't realize who she was when I got there, but being a New York actor, I was very, familiar with her really stupendous work. But she was an absolute doll, and I remember her coming off the set. This is my first TV sitcom ever, and in a style of acting that I don't usually do. I'm more of a method actor trying to be real, but I was coached to do a little more. And she said, "Yeah," she goes, "Man, you acted that soup to nuts," and that sticks in my mind today as one of the first people that made me feel okay about what was going on.
Oh my God. So for one listening who may not know the synopsis of the episode, essentially Steve and Laura, they are walking in dressed up in their Halloween costumes. I know Laura was Tina Turner, Steve was Superman, and Laura, I think was, going to get some money for something. I don't quite remember. But then you, Mark, you play the robber and you stick everybody up in the bank. And just the whole episode is obviously about how Carl, as the police officer, can get Steve and Laura out safely with his sort of goofy Captain Murdoch.
Yeah.
And, you talk about your time with Rosetta, sort of connecting both of you having New York theater roots. And can you just tell me more about that conversation? Because it's interesting that you say that, because I know you guys didn't really share a scene at all in the episode, but
no, it was more like a green room exchange. It's so funny because I was on another green room not long afterwards, and it was so uptight. It's like the star sat in this chair and don't sit there. But there, it was really lovely. And our conversation, wasn't long, and I don't remember all of it, but it was gentle, and it was smart. And she was a veteran that understood that I was new, and not just new to the show, but new to acting on TV. And she had a theater background, and so did I. So we connected on that level. One of the other things that was really fun about being on that set was when we had breaks, Jaleel had me playing handball with him against the wall on the soundstage.
Oh my God.
And he was he's a little kid, you know what I mean? But he was good, so we ran. I mean, I was sweating like a dog. We're sitting in between takes and we're coming back on the set and I'm sweating. I'm like, geez, this kid's going to kill me, But I was very competitive with with him. I didn't give in to him. We had a really a fun time there, so that was great. That was great. And,
Wow.
I didn't realize, what the sitcom, and I think that people, when you're watching a sitcom, you sort of think there's like 25 people in the room laughing, but then you get on a set and there's 400 people in the audience. And it's very conducive to a theater actor because it's really like theater. You don't have close-ups really. You're not retaking all the time. You're doing a whole scene and stopping. So to be in the situation with there where everybody was so sweet was really great. There was a woman who was a bank teller. She was a very famous actor. She was in the original MASH, and it was like, here you're seeing a big time actor. I mean, not an A-list actor, but an A-list character actor that was in A movies, and she was playing a bank teller. It was just like crazy, I mean, I think it was slim pickings back then. It's not like TV today where there's so much. I mean, it's the golden age of television, it feels like, And so, and how, if you don't mind me asking, how do you all come to this, as fans of the show? Because you even seem young to me for even watching it when it first came out.
Well, yeah, and I think Susan Merson, another guest star on the show, asked us this question as well. I mean, this was just one of our childhood shows, Andrew and I. We just enjoyed watching it either with our family or by ourselves. We just had great laughs and great memories from it. And seeing that there's been a craze of nostalgic rewatch podcasts nowadays, we just decided to add our foot into the pool, so to speak, and talk about why Family Matters meant so much to us and take a deep dive into every episode. So that's our reasoning. And I have to ask, Mark, going back to your audition for this guest character, what do you think about that audition process that made him say, okay, Mark's the guy to play the robber?
I think, it's interesting because it was really a character role, and I was probably getting sent on more lead characters. I was a young man, I was a good-looking young man, but so when I got there, I thought like, wow, do I go with, Jaleel is so over the top in his character. It's like they placed this cartoon character in the middle of, yes, it's a sitcom, but the characters are real, except for, and he was real, he was a real nerd, but it was over the top, it was like Three Stooges kind of stuff. I mean, in our scene, I mean, we had the fight scene, but anyway, back to the audition. In the audition process, when you first start out, you go to casting directors, right? And the casting director determines whether you're going to go to the producers. And then the producers determine whether you're going to get on the show or not. And if you're going for a TV pilot, you go one more step to network. And that's when the network executives are going to decide. And they do your contract and how much money you're going to make. Just if you're not nervous enough, you know what I mean? They give you that. But this was very chill. So, they were nice people. And I felt very comfortable. It's funny because it was called Dog Day Halloween, but Dog Day Afternoon is one of my favorite movies. I know it was kind of it wasn't even close, but it was one of my favorite movies. And I was like, okay, let me see. I was kind of surprised that I got cast, to be honest with you. I went in there and I did a great job, I thought. I mean, a good enough job that I didn't walk away embarrassed or I was too nervous. So I was really thankful for that. I was.
And I noticed that you had like a very Chicago gangster delivery to your Robert character. Did you add that in the audition? Maybe that's what led them to say, okay.
Absolutely. Yes, I did. I went a little heavier with the accent than I actually have, but I do have an accent already. But when nobody move, this is a stick up, and the funny thing is one of the writers or the director pulls me aside and he says, hey, Mark, don't overdo it. Okay. I said, I'm working with Jaleel. I'll disappear if I don't overdo it. You know what I mean? But I know what he was saying because Jaleel's got to be the one popping. And then, of course, they have me doing kind of a stunt when there's a fight scene in there, and it's like, man, I'm not a stuntman. I'm doing pratfalls, and I've never done anything like that. So that was fun. I was an athletic person. I played football in college, so I mean, it wasn't like I couldn't do it, but I was like, really?
So I was going to ask about that because, again, you mentioned the fantasy fight scene that you have with Urkel. Is that something that you had to have stage combat training for beforehand with somebody on set, or did they just kind of like wing it?
No. On set, they had somebody come out and they worked out every move. It was all pro. I mean, it was, those are a network show that they don't mess around. And it was a comic pratfalls. It was supposed to be funny, the way he hit me and the down and, so that was fun. I mean, that, like I said, this was all new stuff for me. And again, I felt very welcome and supported there. So like, again, some sets, there's a lot of pressure on those sets. And there's a lot of, I did a number of pilots. I did a show with Terry Bradshaw that was about was like a spoof on Monday Night Football, and, they want that show to be picked up. But, when you're doing a pilot, they could fire you after the first rehearsal and say, you know what, we made a mistake. Happens all the time. It didn't happen to me, but it's not that I didn't think about it. On that set, I actually had Robbie Benson. I don't know if you remember him, but he was the director, and he did a lot of sports movies back in the day. And I played wide receiver in college, and I said, Terry, please, you got to throw me one pass on the set, And I said, hey, Robbie, you cover me, and Terry, a big sound stage, and I just did an in and out pattern, and Terry just went flat, and that thing was just bam right there. And it's funny, that's what I take from that experience. From Family Matters, I take the friendliness and the fun. It was really people still having fun. I know sometimes as an actor where I've done shows that have run for a long time, it's hard to keep that thing going because eventually people get tired, people feel disrespected. It's all that stuff. But that was not what this was. It was the beginning of the run. I don't know whatever happened after. But again, and then I'm looking at, just going back over this stuff and looking at some of the characters. And Thelma Hopkins was in Orlando and, Dawn. I mean, it's like Tony Orlando and Dawn. And I didn't even know that then. And not that I was a huge fan of Tony Orlando, but he was fun. I liked him and I loved her act. And I didn't even know that, until I just checked that out. So there was a lot of cool people working on that set,
I got to circle back to like the moment when you're holding up the bank as the robber. You had a gun. I assume it was a prop gun, and it went off. Like, how was that like preparing for that? Because having a theater background myself, I had a moment like that on stage where I had to shoot off a gun, and we went through like a really careful step-by-step process on how to safely do this. Did you get the same at the Family Matters set when you had to?
Totally. There was no messing around there. This, because of Rust and what happened with that movie, it's really back in the, it's kind of depicted something that is very rare, I mean, thank God, an accident like that. But anytime I've been on a set with a gun, it's total, like, you stop, think, and especially on a sitcom set, there's audiences, there's a lot of young people working on that show. And who else was really, I thought was really great was Kelly, because Kelly was such another sweet, as sweet as she is in that show is how she was, and she was, put it this way, here was this young girl, I don't know how old she was at that time. I don't think she was a teenager yet. I don't know. I don't remember. But she was like, good job, or, what I mean? It was like, I felt like, thank you. You know what I mean? I mean, I wasn't that nervous. Once it got going, it wasn't so rough. But, and, they took the Tina Turner bit and they just plowed it into the ground. You know what I mean? With me mentioning, calling her different names. I mean, you talk about beating a dead horse. I mean, they did that on that one, but It works.
I think it was like Patti LaBelle and Paula Abdul.
Yeah. It was so.
Oh, I had to mention, because the Abe Lincoln costume you were wearing, I remember, like, as you were going through your robber spiel, your beard started to come off. Do you notice something like that when you're just in the moment, or were you just kind of like locked into your lines and you didn't pick up on that?
It's so funny that you bring that up, because I forgot all about that until you just said something. I'm like, oh shoot, I mean, it's like, Kira, come on, man, it's my first shot here, and the thing's coming off,
yeah,
and nobody cared because it's a sitcom. His beard's coming off, but you watch it and went, something's wrong there, and it wasn't meant to come off.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant.
I thought it was meant to come off that whole time. I thought that was part of the show.
No, it wasn't.
Wow.
But then again, it's a sitcom, so anything can go wrong. It's okay for the most part.
Yeah. Now, what if it completely came off? Do you think you would respond improvisationally to that, or would you just keep on going like it didn't happen?
They would have stopped. They would have stopped. They can stop. The sitcom process is one of the best gigs you could get as far as hours worked. I mean, your work week is not like shooting a film. It's literally rehearsing a 22-minute or a 20-minute piece. So, everybody's not working the whole time because everybody's got different scenes. So, if you're there for 5-6 hours a day, that's a lot, which, as you know, in film, 12 hours a day is more like what you're putting in. And then on your shoot night, which is usually a Friday night, that's the long day. And it's exciting, though. It's exciting to everybody, because when you're an actor and you're used to theater, you do like the audience out there. You feed off the audience. And myself in particular is, when I was working, I had not a hard time, but I needed the adrenaline boost from the live show, you need the pressure. Now there's already pressure because, like I said, if you screw up, they can find somebody in 24 hours to take your place. But, I was never worried about that there, but it can get pretty crazy. But the audiences are they're feeding you, just especially when it's a comedy, because that's what's nerve-wracking about a comedy. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but if you don't make them laugh, you're failing. Like if you're in a serious drama, you don't know. I mean, you know if you're hitting it or you're not hitting it, or you feel focused or not. But when you're doing comedy, whether it's stand-up or a sitcom, and there's a live audience, you got to hit it, man. And that's how you know that you're doing well.
Right. Wow. Now, things like the choice to dress you up in an Abe Lincoln costume, is that something that you can suggest? Is that something that the costume design staff suggests? Like, is there anything to that, or is it just kind of a random thing?
That's the writers. The writers already came up with that. There was no, it's not a situation where, now I suppose if you had a lot of success on a sitcom, you have some input about things. And I know that's like a director's nightmare, because every actor thinks they have a better idea, or they can get to that point, But, I think it's the sitcom and TV in general is a writer's medium, even more than the director. The director takes that script, they pretty much follow it. They don't rewrite it. I've never had that experience on a set. I mean, the writers could go and rewrite it and come back, because they're there for rehearsal. The writers are there for rehearsals. So not all of them, but enough of them that they look at, okay, we're ready to show you that scene. They come out and they look at it, I mean, I've had some crazy experiences, because I did a sitcom pilot for James Brooks. It was called Sibs. And it was with Dan Castellaneta, who's the voice of Homer Simpson, Margaret Colin, and I can't remember the other actor. And it was a big job, and it was a great script, and I had a great part. And it didn't get picked up, but it was one of those things where you go, man, this one's gotta happen. I wake up in the morning and I have a cold sore, and I'm like, oh no, God, you can't do this to me, But I get on set, and this is so Hollywood, the executive producer, I go up to her and I said, man, I hate to tell you this, but I got a cold sore coming up on my lip. She goes, oh shit, oh my God, oh gee, okay, hang on, let me get you a prescription. mean, there was a prescription in my dressing room. I think it took a half an hour. And the producer comes in like she's the doctor, and she's going, put it on your lip, put it on your lip, but just keep it on all day. Just keep putting it. I know it says only once a day. Just keep it. It worked. It's like, things that you think, oh no, I'm done here. They've already dealt with all this stuff, and it's really funny and fun. But that was led to almost a sitcom that Dan Castellaneta wrote with his wife. A producer, I think it was Warren Littlefield actually, came to that show or saw that pilot and said, hey, this guy would be perfect to play a brother team that's doing a local TV show, and it went, we're going to do it. It's about to happen. And then the head producer, Dan Castellaneta, wanted his wife to write with him, and they didn't want that, and gone. It's like, I mean, these are the things that actors go through. And it's a lot, it's a lot. And I think the people that really do well in the business they just plow. They don't think about that stuff. They just go to the next, to the next, to the next. I was also a writer. I was in, writing plays. I still write plays. So I do, I found myself sometimes judging scripts, which is a real bad thing for an actor to do, because just do it. Just do it to the best of your, it doesn't matter. I had so many funny experiences with people that worked. I'd go on I did like the Terry Bradshaw script. I won't mention the actress, but she's worked all over the place, tons, right? So she, another actor, and myself were flown out for the network audition, right? So we go out there, and this actress is superb. I mean, really good, really funny, fun. And I got cast. The other gentleman I was with got cast, and she didn't. And she flew out with us, And I remember being in the hotel room, and we're going, man, I feel bad. We flew on the plane together. We had a nice exchange together, and we knock on the door, and to say, man, we're sorry you didn't get it. Well, she's got somebody in the room with her. She's laughing. Oh, I know. Don't worry about it. Funny. Don't even think about it. And she's done network shows from here to forget about. And I mean, it's water off a duck's back. Next. I found it was, I had some, I auditioned for Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs, which is a classic, right?
Right.
And, you talk about your heartbreaks. I mean, there was a script that as an actor, you could really sink your teeth into, because it was dialogue. It's like a play. Again, those things are like plays, And I was reading for the part of Nice Guy Eddie, and I read it, and I was called back, and I read for Quentin Tarantino, who I didn't even know. Nobody knew who he was. I mean, I don't know if you see Quentin Tarantino's personality. Well, when you read the script, you're not expecting Quentin Tarantino, who's like a film nerd. You're expecting somebody that's half a gangster or has some kind of experience. But he's like, hey, yeah, great. Let's try it again. Let's do it. It's like, wow, the surprises. So those are turning points, pilots that don't get picked up. And Sean Penn's brother, got cast in that part. And, and it is what it is, that's the business. And really, I think it's one of the reasons I started to focus on my own stuff, because it wasn't like today. There was so much you wanted to audition. You know what I mean? There was a lot of bad stuff. It was not, I felt it was, once in a while we came, some things came up that were cool.
I want to circle back. I think I had like one last question about your Family Matters experience before I throw it over to Andrew, because I know Andrew has a bunch of questions for you. We're talking about like a producer not wanting you to go too over the top with the robber delivery. And I guess I also noticed just from the studio audience laughter that there may have been a lot of kids in that audience that probably wouldn't have minded if you went over the top. I don't know if there were a lot of kids there, and how was that feedback? feedback if there was.
There were in that show, what I remember is there was a lot, Family Matters. There's a lot of families there. That's like people coming in. I think it was also a large Black audience, which in my opinion is more expressive. And so there was that, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, I mean, there's kids there. Like I said, there's so many people there that you can't even believe it. You're looking at a full theater is what it is, But yeah, there was kids there. There was, it's so funny how something sticks in your mind after all these years, but there was one person that had this great laugh every time something, and you're focusing on, and you start playing to that person. You know how like when you're with somebody and you're with a friend and you're on a roll and you're funny and you got them, focus on that person, right? You hear them laugh, okay, I'm going to get him again. Boom, boom, every punchline. So the audience is really, that's the thing. That live audience is so amazing. Now, you could go on a film set, a one-camera film set, and you could knock it out of the park. You don't hear anything.
Real.
And when you're doing a comedy, they don't even go to hold back their laughter, just nothing, There's a couple of those too, which is really kind of weird. I mean, obviously on a film, a serious film or a drama, you don't worry about that.
So in your acting career, you said Family Matters was your first casting, am I right?
Yes.
So after that first casting in Family Matters, did you have a direction of where you wanted to go with your career?
You know what? I had a very good agent, Susan Smith at the time. So one of the issues with my agent was they saw me in a show called Tony and Tina's Wedding, which was an Italian-American from Queens. So, it was with an accent. It was, what happened was they see that. This is what happens in Hollywood is they see that part and that's who they keep throwing it up against you. And here I am, like, I'm not an Italian-American from Queens. I'm Lebanese and, well, I'm Sicilian too, but I'm a mutt, and I'm not from New York, New York. I'm from Poughkeepsie, which has a little of the accent. But what happened was I was just pigeonholed into that part. And that was frustrating because, like when I did go on film auditions, I did well on them. If they were, if I loved them and liked them, but my career, I don't think, you know what? I'll say this, if there's young actors listening to this, you have to get out to Hollywood as young as possible because there's a whole system to get through, finding the agent, which some people never even get the agent. You have to get the agent. You have to go to the casting directors. You have to fail. There's so much going on. So now if you're out there for 2 or 3 years, like I was, you'll start, all the casting people know you. The producers even start to know you. But I didn't get out there till I was 30 some years old. That's too late, in my opinion, if you want to go that route. And I do think LA is still the capital of it all. Yes, they shoot movies all over the place, but the bank is in Los Angeles and the decisions are made in Los Angeles. And if you want to get your career going, get out there earlier. I should have been out there. You know what? I wanted to be staying in New York. I was a New York type of actor. I wanted to stay in New York. I had gone out there earlier to LA in my younger days, but personal thing came up and I had to go back. And that's when I should have gone, when I was 22 years old, So, and I think if I, had really stuck with it, I would have done more shows. But I decided, no, I'm going to go back to New York, do my own shows, produce them. And that's the path I took. I have done other films and I've still done some, I do acting still, but it's a career changer. It's a very good question because the people that are really good at this are business people, and any manager and any agent is going to say, I want a person who's a business person. You know what I mean? That's going to plug, not mess around, not fool around, not judge the script, just go, And so should say I lacked direction and that was not a good thing. You know what I mean? I did enjoy the sitcom structural very much. I just thought it was really really fun. And listen, I did a lot of pilots that didn't get picked up. So one of those and most of them were okay. The one that was really great was the James Brooks pilot. I thought if that was picked up, it would have been a career changer. But, again, you can't look at it that way. You have to have 1,000 opportunities, not 4. Do you know what I mean? So
I get that. Now, when it comes to you going and getting through your career and then switching to more the creative writing and producing side, was that something that you discovered in yourself that you enjoyed, or was it just something you fell into?
It was something I was already doing, because when I first got to New York, I had some friends that were, already dug in. I mean, doing shows in like 20-seat places where there's garbage on the floor. I mean, I remember my first play in New York was in Chelsea, and my family came down and my aunts and uncles to support me, and I'm like, oh my God, what are they going to think? But it's live theater, and people get through it and love it. But you're doing all this. I watched my friends of mine write scripts, get the show up, and I was doing what they call performance art. So when we weren't doing regular plays, we were doing performance art, which was, here's an example of one of the acts I had. I'd get in a cab and I'd have a tape recorder on, and I would make like, hey, I got to go to this place called the Dorinka, which was a place back then. And I'd say, yeah, I don't even know where the place is. I don't even blah, 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 blah. And I put down the place, I put down the host. I mean, it's part of the act. And then we play that over that Nassar, he's supposed to be here. Nasty, they call it. Nasty's supposed to be here. He's not here. But we place a bug on him so we know where he is. And then you hear me in the cab putting everybody down and then showing up. And it was stuff like that. It was like anything goes, right? So a friend of mine from college, Nancy Casero, we were very close. And I said, hey, you got to come down here and try this performance art. It's a place for us to perform and try new things. It was fun. So she was doing some cool stuff down there too. And she said, I've seen so many weddings that we got to do something about a wedding. And I said, well, we can't just put a wedding on stage. It's performance art. We got to do something else. Let's serve some food, let's set up some tables. And one thing led to the other, which was the original show was in a studio in Soho, and everybody got in cabs to go to American Legion Hall on 14th Street, a mile and a half away.
Oh, no.
They got in cabs. Okay. So, and then my roommate was a stockbroker who I went to college with. And I said, Joe, I can't even get actors to do the show because they don't get it. I don't know if they won't get it or they don't want to do it. But all you have to do is play an usher in my wedding, groomsman. You have the accent already, He became the producer, because he had seen the show. And we threw that show up, and it was such a blockbuster because nobody had seen anything like it. But also there's nothing, wedding stuff always goes because it doesn't matter who you are. Everybody gets it. When the bride's mother comes down the aisle in a black veil, you already know what's going on,
Right?
You're dealing with a beast. You know what I mean? It's just the laughter is that. So I did that. And then I just kept producing my own shows. And so what LA really was a chance. I had written a regular play, and that eventually did get made into a movie. The play was called The Mayor's Limo, and the movie was called The Line in the Sand, and that was John Bernthal was in that. John Bernthal maybe. I was still having more of a rewarding time focusing on my own stuff. It's very stressful. It's like indie theater. You're still, and I'm still doing it today. I did a show in Chicago, and where I was telling Johnny Boy's graduation. Johnny's getting out of jail. They're throwing him a party. We did it a half a block from the actual jail. People went to a little Italian place under the L tracks, and every night you'd see Johnny getting out of jail. On video, because we could do that. And, these are I love doing these shows. They're very unique. I know how to do them. I know how to produce them. But I was doing that before, and then I was in LA. I did this play, The Mayor's Limo, out in LA. Now, this is the other great thing about LA. Even for theater, when you do a show in LA, at least back then, people came out to see it. Like the agents, the managers that are looking for stuff, they're looking at those plays. And so I had a deal come out of that, and that deal brought me back to New York. And it's not like I don't like LA. I actually love LA, but I still really love New York. You know what I mean? As far as a place to live and as far as a place that was inspiring.
It sounds like New York is home for you. So I'm happy that you're back. I'm in New York and I love New York.
I'm in San Francisco, unfortunately. Yeah, I live in San Francisco now. I lived in the East Village for, I don't know, 30 years. Where do you live?
So I'm in Rochester, New York. I'm upstate, but I love going to the city, going to the Village is one of my favorite places because you see all this creativity happening.
It's just, you know what it is? I don't miss it until I get there again, right? And I go out on the street and I go, oh my God, this is the center of the universe. There's no other place like it. The cars, the people, there's so much to see. It's nothing like it. Nothing like it, And you can, people say it's expensive. Well, it's expensive to live a lot of places. It's always been expensive. And, you find a way, especially when you're a young person, you'll live with 4 people, and I lived with 3 people until I was, well into my 40s. So I had a very extended childhood. I didn't get married until I was in my 50s. And it was, my wife, I met her in San Francisco when I was doing an artist residency. And that's how I ended up out here. But I would like to talk about this new project I have, which is pretty cool.
Yes, I would love to hear.
In 1966, in the Tenderloin in San Francisco, there was a place called Gene Compton's Cafeteria. And the Tenderloin was it was considered a vice district. Anything goes. It still kind of does, but it had a little more life back then. But in 1966, transgender sex workers and, queer activists, the vanguard, rioted against police brutality. And that was 3 years before the famous Stonewall riots. So it was a history that was almost lost. And I walked into a museum, the Tenderloin Museum, which is pretty ironic that there's a museum in the Tenderloin. It's this amazing museum in the Tenderloin. And the person who ran the museum, Katie Connery, she showed me this exhibit. I went, what? I've never heard of that. And man, that would be an amazing immersive play, right? Like you go into a diner, you eat food, and then the shit comes off the streets and you just go, whoa, 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 whoa. And with 2 transgender writers, Colette Legrand and Donna Persano, we took a year and we wrote it. And their stories were so moving and so heartbreaking, but also triumphant. We created that show and it was such a success. We did it in a diner on Polk Street that the Tenderloin Museum is producing it again. And we're building our own place, which is, I'm going to shoot myself doing that. But, because I've always gone into places where it's already somebody's running it. And of course, you run into problems there. I mean, when I was doing the show in Chicago, the guy who ran it was a happy gangster. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't ask, but, there was all kinds of shady stuff going on. So this will be nice to have our own place. It'll have our dressing rooms. I mean, we need to recreate an old diner. Our set designer, Roxy Rose, I call her a trans superstar. She finds this place in Bakersfield, which is rural, right? An old diner. Cuts the chairs. She gets the counters and transport it to San Francisco. And, the farmer who owned it, I'm just like, they're going back and forth. And he says, oh, you can have, and the hardest thing to find is stools that lock down, especially old ones, right? Mm-hmm. And they had 10 of them, which is what we needed. And the guy goes, oh, I'll give it to you for $2,000. The counter, the stools. I'm like, that's amazing, right? That's great. Right. Roxy goes back to the guy, goes, nobody's buying this crap. She went after him, And oh my God, she brought it down to like $1,200. And then we went back and we got the booths and all this. And you have to see Roxy. I mean, she's stylish. She lives near Bakersfield. Crazy enough. She's a neon master. She's got the blonde hair, the black suit, cowboy hat. I've got a video of her cutting the stools off of the floor. I mean, and then putting it in a truck and driving it to San Francisco, and I'm only going, if these farmers ever found out where those stools were going and what they were being used for, I mean, you talk about red state to blue state. I mean, but you know,
Right.
the farmer was cool too. Everybody's pretty cool. But that's my latest project, and it's going to be pretty wild.
That sounds amazing. Being queer and knowing the importance of queer history is big for me. You know, I knew about Stonewall. I did not know about this incident until recently.
Oh my God, Andrew, it'll blow you away. As a matter of fact, my co-writer Donna Persano, when we did the show in 2018, she's an activist, and she was the grand marshal of Pride Parade. Now I'm cisgender straight, right? But Donna and I are like this, and she goes, "Can you walk with me? You know, I'll be in the car. Will you walk along the car?" I said, "Sure." You know, I've never experienced anything like that. To look out and see tens, hundreds of thousands of people on either side was just a very moving experience. You know, so if people go to Compton's Cafeteria Riot.com, just as it's spelled, no apostrophe, obviously, Compton's Cafeteria Riot.com, you can get on the list and you'll know when we're opening, and you'll see the history, you'll see some publicity that we had. And yeah. Now, one more thing that I'm working on, which I think you'll find interesting also, is when I was in Chicago, I met this gentleman named Herman Roberts. Somebody wanted me to write a screenplay. I do write screenplays for people, and he wanted me to write a screenplay about Herman Roberts. And Herman Roberts was a Black entrepreneur who had a club called the Roberts Show Club in the 50s and 60s. And during this de facto segregation, it was a Black club where Black performers came, the best, all the best. You know, Sammy Davis, Dinah Washington, Dick Gregory, Sam Cooke. I mean, everybody was there. And it was so fascinating because I went to his house down, you know, south side of Chicago, all over the walls, and pictures of him with, you know, Muhammad Ali and Sonny Liston on either side of him. So that never happened because the money never was there to write it, but I kept them in mind, and I later said, wow, now that I've done Compton's, because I'm usually doing comedies, right? Now that I've done Compton's, let's do a night at the Roberts Show Club, right? So his son, Rod Roberts, is a director and writer in Hollywood, very talented guy, you know? So Herman was still alive when we started this project a few years ago, and I went, and Herman goes, talk to my son. I would love this to happen. But, you know, he was, I think, in his 90s at this point. So Rod and I wrote this immersive show, and it's the night Hugh Hefner comes down, and he wants to take Dick Gregory out, who was a comedian at the time, and bring him to the Playboy Club. And Dick Gregory was an activist. I mean, Dick Gregory has a huge history, and Herman Roberts is an entrepreneur. And, you know, an entrepreneur is part of Black history that people got to start remembering, you know. So here was this Herman Roberts who, man, that guy could just do anything. It wasn't just the club he had taxi business, hotels. I mean, this guy was unbelievable, had oil well. And so we are exploring that night when Herman Roberts is losing his best comedian to the great white hope, you know, Hugh Hefner. And if he doesn't let him out of his contract, he's going to be the bad guy, right? And Hugh Hefner is going to come in as the hero because it'll be the first Black performer, if you can imagine this, in the 60s, a comedian to talk on stage. You couldn't, they never had it. It wasn't an official rule. It was an unofficial rule. You could play music. And, you know, we really looked into our history on this. You know, Dick Gregory was on the Jack Parr show eventually. And he tells this, I have to tell the story because it's very moving and it's central to what we were trying to do. Dick Gregory went to the Playboy Club, huge hit, became a huge star. But before that, he was playing at Herman Roberts Club, and he's Billy Eckstein, who was a very famous singer also. He said to Billy Eckstein, he goes, hey, man, you know, I saw you on the Jack Parr show. He goes, my wife and I watched that religiously. Someday, I'm going to be on the Jack Parr show. Right. That was his dream. His wife and him watched it every day before he went out to work. And this great story. And Billy Eckstein, he goes, he's probably a good guy, right? Billy Eckstein goes, no, he's an asshole. And Dick Gregory's like, what? He goes, well, do you know that if you watch the show, black performers never get to sit down on the couch?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
there's a recording of Dick Gregory telling this story, and he almost cries when he's telling the story because he said, when I heard that, I was so brokenhearted that not only that it was what it was, but that I never noticed that. And so after he became famous, Jack Parr calls his house and his wife answers the phone. And the words he says, he goes, it was like God came down into her lap when Jack Parr's people call. Honey, it's Jack Parr's people on the phone. Picks it up and he goes, sorry, I can't go on your show. Why is that? You don't let black people sit on your couch. You don't. Out of the shows. Sure enough, Jack Parr calls him and says, and Dick Gregory's great because I had to study him more with this going on. My father always loved Dick Gregory. He goes, you see, when he calls me up, he goes, hello, Dick, this is Mr. Parr. That little thing, like, Dick, see, I'm Dick, he's Mr. Parr. But he said, you can sit on the couch after. And he was the first black person to sit on the couch at the Jack Parr show. So we took that moment and, it's just the night at the club, running the club, all the hassles of the club. But the audience is coming to the club. They're sitting at a table. They're watching the show,
Oh, my God.
And we want to do that. And we've been talking with the Harold Washington Center. They're interested. So my goal would be to open it in the South Side. That's what I would love to do.
Awesome. Love that. Well, hey, Mark, thank you so much for sharing not only your Family Matters experiences, but sharing the experiences that you have in this creative artistry world. It's wonderful. And before we let you go, can you just remind people how can they keep in touch with you and the work that you're up to again? Like, where can they find you online?
You can find us on the website, Compton's Cafeteria Riot.com. On Instagram, Compton's Cafeteria Riot. That's it. And then on Facebook, Compton's Cafeteria Riot, the play. And if you have any questions, you can go Mark at Compton's Cafeteria Riot.com. And you can remember. I mean, these titles are so long, it messes up my email, but what can I tell you, But I really enjoyed it. I have to say, you're both wonderful. Thank you so much. I felt very comfortable.
Good.
It was great.
Yeah. Well, the pleasure is all ours, and thank you so much. And we'll definitely stay in touch.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I want to hear this or watch it again. Like this, I'll watch it. But that's all right.
No need to. You are fabulous. Thank you so much.
Right.
We loved your stories.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Ciao.
Thank you, Mark. You're amazing. Hopefully, I will be seeing you at the Compton Cafeteria Riot. I am excited for that.
I hope so, Andrew. All right. Take care.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye. All right. How about that?
That was pretty good. Now I have to prepare. I am going to that. I am going to sign up on the website right now, and I'm going. I'm going to get a ticket, and I don't care what I have to do. I am going.
Yeah. And I might be right there with you, man. That sounds like a wonderful experience. And I think that it speaks to the difference between what is going on in the artist world versus what the public sees. Because maybe there are some out there in the public that, say they're a big Family Matters fan like we are, and they look at that guest actor, Mark Nassar, and they haven't seen him in anything else that they're familiar with. So they think, oh, Mark Nassar's not up to anything. Well, obviously, Mark Nassar is up to plenty of interesting, varied, creative, artistic stuff. And I was surprised by all those stories. I think that he's doing a wonderful job, and I can't wait to, stay in touch with what he's doing.
Yeah, this was very enlightening, far more enlightening than I expected, which I am very happy about. Yeah, I feel good after this one. This was good.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know what? Appropriately enough, before I give you the grace, the opportunity to sign us off, again, a reminder, Delicious Recap Family Matters. For you listening, email us, thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. We'd love your questions, comments, feedback, whatever about this interview. And at Family Matters Rewatch Pod on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Threads. All right, Andrew. I know you're feeling delicious about this one.
If you're in a cafeteria right now listening to us, I hope you let the deliciousness ring.